thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time. I understand exactly how much time, our time is worth. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about shortening some cycles. We're going to talk about finding evil faster. We're going to have a whole discussion around normal. I love this motto. It's 4 simple words. But how hard is it to actually know normal? How hard is it to actually find evil? A lot of us in this room understand how hard that equation actually becomes. We spend a whole lot of time chasing normal, looking for evil, only to, in the end, find something that looks exactly like an APT but is not. And we're going to talk about a bunch of those examples today and how we can start as a community to put this intelligence together in a way that we can all use. Sound good? Awesome. Look, the journey of Carbon Black really started with one premise: centrally collect the right data to rewind the tape on attacks. But as we started this journey, we started to realize that collecting all of that data doesn't necessarily mean you can determine normal faster. In fact, when you start to collect all of this data, the more you actually start to look at it, the more abnormal everything becomes. We're going to talk about some of those examples today, and I'll give you one of our brief hypotheses that we started with that was quickly myth-busted along the journey. We thought when we started that binaries on an endpoint would stabilize over time. It's actually not true. They continue to linearly increase. Like, why does a user continue to need executables when they can do their job on a thing? That still continues to happen. We wasted a lot of time. During our engagements, we found a lot of normal at the tail end of our chain, and it turns out none of it was evil, but we wasted a whole lot of time. So what we're going to talk about today is how we can apply those lessons back to what you're doing in your programs and hopefully inspire this community to get together to help fix some of this stuff. Because I'm tired of wasting time chasing good known applications. Anybody else tired of chasing good known applications? SCCM is a pain. We'll talk a little bit about that. So now we're going to talk about evil. When we start, we generally ask ourselves, is this abnormal? I.e., a thing happened. Maybe it was an alert and we started an incident response engagement. Maybe we're out hunting. But we start with that hypothesis. Is this abnormal? Then we start to say to ourselves, is this normal? The intersection of both becomes a very interesting place. When we start to pay attention to these things, you start to realize that abnormal and normal overlap all the time, and the buckets we use to define those are probably a little incorrect. This year, some great work has been done to help actually find evil. And that work, thank you, MITRE, by the way. Carbon Black is a huge fan of what happened with MITRE ATT&CK. We actually have a taxonomy that's understandable, updatable, and relatable back to the kill chain. So now we understand the TTPs mapped out to the entire kill chain. This helps us start to focus on evil faster. But what happens when you start to overlay this data is you get a massive amount of false positives. We can tell you this because we created a watch list that's mapped back to attack MITRE. So if you're a Carbon Black customer, that'll be available in like a week in GA. We have a beta program right now, but the number of false positives go through the roof. And this is the problem. While it allows us to focus on attacker behavior, we are still left with this giant amount of noise. And it becomes, what I like to refer to as finding the needle in the needle stack. So when we take all of that away, we're left with all this noise still. Is it a print queue or is it the Russians? I don't know. We got to figure that out faster, right? Can't find evil unless we can get through the cycle of knowing normal faster. So look, abnormal and normal are intertwined. They're in a relationship with each other. And it depends on how you analyze data. And I'll give you an example. Is notepad.exe at 10 a.m.? Like if you observe the behavior of that binary at 10 a.m., it may look one way. But if you do it at 10 a.m. and 10 p.m., it's going to change. If you do it every 10 seconds, it's going to change. If you do it every 1 second, it's going to change. Abnormal is based on your observations. So now we're going to talk a little bit about levels of abnormal that are out there. And they exist all over the place. When you start looking at endpoint behavior, you start to quickly realize that there is process abnormalities. There are system abnormalities, memory-based abnormalities, and certainly users have abnormalities all the time, right? Some of you guys can probably relate to this. So what does this all mean? It really means that you have to understand each one of these to actually understand normal. And if you can get to know that normal, and all of these get removed, then the focus becomes just finding evil. If we can spend our time just finding evil, we can get through this cycle of knowing normal faster, I think we have a chance of getting down to a reasonable time to actually defend our systems. I think if we don't, and we continue to do what we've done as an industry, we are going to continue to have a problem. I mean, look, Gartner says it's 180 days mean time to detect. I think Verizon last year said it was 211. When I started in 1998, the number was 369 days. So at best, in 20 years, we've gotten 6 months better. It's not a good statistic. Like, that's just not a good look as an industry, right? So now let's talk about how we actually bucket normal and evil. Today, we generally use two buckets. We say something is normal, therefore it's benign, or something is abnormal, therefore it's evil. But as an industry, how do we figure that out? We start to use frequency analysis, right? Because frequency analysis tells us if it happens frequently, it's probably good. If it happens infrequently, it's probably bad, because that's your outliers. We think that's bad. We think we should actually focus on infrequent and malicious, not frequency being the indicator. And we think the table is going to look a little bit more like this. Normal things act evil all the time. Look, if you watch any of the cool talks on evading antivirus, what you'll quickly see is none of the attackers are actually dropping binaries anymore, at least the good ones. They're all using good known processes, whether that's PowerShell, WMI, all of these things. So normal stuff acts evil. Why? Because I approved it. I approved that application. When somebody submitted that this application come on my network and I was a CISO, I approved that. So guess what? It's normal evil. In a Dungeons and Dragons sense, it looks a little bit more like this. And apps operate like that all the time. There's chaotic good apps like SCCM that just spray things all over the place and network connections like crazy, right? You have abnormal benign things like an increase in X or something changes in your environment, but it's completely benign and you chased it down. It's a lot of time wasted. So look, here's what we're going to do. I've never seen a keynote do this, but we're going to play a game today. Everybody ready to play a game? Should be pretty awesome. The game's going to be called Evil or Not Evil. I'm going to give you some examples of things that happen, give you the front end of the chain. I want you to think about it. You don't have to shout answers. We're going to think about it. We're going to walk through these in our head. We'll give you an example of where we won and we're actually right, and where we failed on our hunts. All right, evil or not evil? You get an alert or maybe a watch list hit that says your SAM file was accessed and scraped. Is that evil or not evil? Oh, if you go to MITRE ATT&CK, oh look, PW dump does that. Mimikatz does that, so it must be evil, right? I like that answer. Yeah, what's the context of that, right? What's the context? Like, what are the parent things that kicked that off? In this particular case, we were assuming evil. That shouldn't happen, right? But it turns out we were wrong, and it was completely normal. You know what does this all the time? Adobe Updater. You know what Adobe Updater does? It watches all of these processes so it can stay up and running. And from Adobe's perspective, that probably makes perfect sense. I mean, after all, they've sold billions of dollars of software, and their software stays up all the time. From our perspective, we're like, hey, Adobe, maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you can create two processes, an A and a B, with shared mutexes, and just watch each other, and if it fails, but get out of what the adversaries do, right? So no, in this particular case, the red balloon was not evil. A child just lost his red balloon. But that wasted a ton of time. All right, here we go. Next up. Notepad.exe makes a netcon. Good or bad? It's supposed to happen? Because I was told for years, Notepad never makes network connections unless it's evil. Oh, but wait. If I use file shares, and I'm a user, and I open a text file from a file share, well, guess what? Notepad makes netcons all over the place. Context becomes everything to determine whether it's evil or not. In this particular case, when you start to trace it, you start to see that the parent process was actually CPU checker.exe. And our TAL team discovered a brand new piece of Monero mining software that used Notepad to connect back, start the mining process. So is it bad that Notepad.exe makes connections? No, that's going to happen every day, I guess, unless you get rid of Notepad in your environment, right? But injections happen all the time, and the context becomes everything. If you don't have the visibility and can put that picture together, you're just going to miss it and assume things, and honestly waste a lot of time. I'm going to reiterate that a few times. What's my third one here? Oh, this is a good one. MS Build. I hate MS Build right now. MS Build got put on every Windows 10 box. And MS Build, and I'll tell you right now, if you work in a company that doesn't have a lot of engineers and you see MS Build activity, like immediately look into that. So we'll just skip the part where we play the game and say, if you don't have engineers building things, you shouldn't have MS Build running. What's the problem with MS Build? Is it evil? Is it not evil? If, like, how often should that happen when the parent process isn't Visual Studio? These are questions we all have to answer when we're out hunting, right? When we're doing IR engagements. So what's that answer? The answer becomes context becomes everything. MS Build will make all kinds of network connections because most of the time, developers are compiling things on the network, right? Their source code repositories are going to live on the network. So guess what? MS Build, netcon, it's going to look like lateral movement all over the place. So is it evil? In this particular case, there was a whole lot of activity, but it was abnormal and benign. We saw a whole bunch of red balloons, but it turns out it wasn't. However, and Joe Kazaza from Red Canary is presenting at lunch. He's going to deep dive into MS Build and why it's bad. But just to tee up his talk a little bit, I can make anything run. I can make Mimikatz run, and it's going to launch as MS Build, right? But that activity that it does, the behaviors that are expressed by MS Build, post that happening, we should have visibility to be able to stop. That's how you're going to determine whether it's actually evil or not. All right, one of my favorite ones. PowerShell.exe. Starts making network connections to other boxes. Evil? Not evil. You got to make a call. Come on, we got like 2 minutes when we triage this stuff, right? All right, he's in the camp of evil. I'm in the camp of evil too because PowerShell's pretty awesome. I mean, look, we've seen a rise ever since PowerShell Empire came out, right? There's droppers everywhere. I mean, it's like pretty awesome the stuff you can do with PowerShell. My system administrators, however, would tell me don't ban PowerShell. Like, we can't do our job without PowerShell. I can't do data center automation. I can't do rebuilds of endpoints. Can't do any of that stuff because we've built our entire operations around PowerShell. So good luck banning that, right? How do I determine whether PowerShell doing something, making a network connection to a new box, is good or bad? That's the life we live. Those are the questions we have to answer. But if I had that, what I'm going to refer to as normal intelligence, right? And we treated it like we do with adversarial threat intelligence as a community. Like, we exchanged it. We talked about it. We had a place to go find this stuff together. That's where we need to be, because this cycle becomes shorter then. I certainly know what it was like when I actually had a real job, and this would happen. We had tribal spreadsheets. I had text messages to people who were way smarter than me. Hey, Ben, have you seen this before? Mike, have you seen this before? How many of us live in that world where it's like, is this, I got to make the call, is it actually evil or is it good, right? And we err on the side of not interrupting the user all the time, right? So we have to walk that razor line as responders and threat hunters all the time. Because I can tell you what it's like to be in an engineering company when you block a developer from actually being able to push out a binary that sells millions of dollars worth of stuff. It's going to be a bad day for you in that seat. So in this particular case, it's abnormal benign because, it was my system administrators orchestrating things on endpoints, right? You have to see the behaviors of something like PowerShell. And I was going to swap this out, and I'm sure a couple people in my company will be upset that I didn't, with WMI. And I'm going to briefly add one to this list, which is WMI, and it's going to fall in the same category. If you look at WMI, and how it actually works. SCCM is going to spray that all. So if you have SCCM in your environment, you're going to have to know that. You're going to have to know how WMI actually looks to find it when it's being evil. So just know that the bad guys know that we're after PowerShell, and they've already moved on to WMI. So expect a lot of lateral movement via that. All right, we're going to go to the last one. DLLhost.exe. When is it okay for DLLhost.exe to kick off something like a command interpreter, like, I'll just use cmd.exe as an example. This one I didn't come here to give answers, because ultimately, no one has all the answers when it comes to this game. But as a group, we're really smart. We can start to put this data together and start to talk to each other, and vendors can stop competing on things like false positive rates. I think we're going to get better and win. So in this particular case, I don't know, we got a whole bunch more investigating to do. But how much time do we waste until we actually get an answer on whether or not this is normal behavior for an approved application in my environment? This is extremely hard. We want to help. We want to help all of you in this room, because we've seen what happens when a community gets together. And if you're a customer of Carmen Black, you're part of the user exchange, and this happens on a daily basis. Defenders exchanging information with defenders and actually getting through these cycles faster. As a community, we need that. It cannot be exclusive to one organization and one set of customers, because no vendor out there is going to sell 100% of the market. It's just not going to happen, right? So if we continue to hoard that information, we continue to not give it away as a community, we are doing a disservice to ourselves as defenders. Imagine a world without all of this noise from third-party applications. Imagine a world where we could actually help to educate major software vendors that their applications look exactly like an APT. Imagine a world, and some of you may actually work for a major software manufacturer. You may actually be able to influence this problem in your company. But imagine a world where you have to approve a new application coming in, and you can look the vendor in the face and say, do you trigger any of MITRE ATT&CK? So now I know, right? At the beginning of it. They don't actually know that what they're doing is causing us pain and wasting time. What they're doing from their perspective makes perfect sense, because their binaries work. Look, Microsoft has sold a whole lot of binaries, right? We have to help educate them. We really do. Like, that's a big part of our job. They don't know that all of this noise lands on us, and we got to cut through it. So we all have work to do as a community. What we need to start doing is linking application software development with threat hunting and incident response, and feed that back over to them. Here's what Carmen Black would like to do about all of this. We would like to provide MITRE with good known binaries and false positives for every single TTP in MITRE ATT&CK. So imagine having a repository where you can go and quickly rule out whether it's a false positive, where you can start to manage normal intelligence in your environment. We want to help developers do the right thing, stop yelling at them. We need to get into their world, and they need to get into our world. We got to get together and get a little weird for a while. We want to reduce false positive rates for everybody in the industry, not just ourselves. Look, I'll stand on the stage and say I've never worked for another vendor. I came here because of Carmen Black's vision. I came here because of our mission. But more importantly, I came here because fundamental to the company, we are defenders. Like, we do this on a daily basis, and we live with the pain on a daily basis, so we understand it. We want to save everybody time. You know, Ben has talked about this. JJ talked about this last year. One of the most precious commodities we have is time. They're giving us more money, right? We're a $98 billion market cap now in security. That has grown extremely since 1998. They're giving us more money. They are giving us more people. Now, granted, everyone I talk to says 6 to 9 months to actually get someone in the seat trained to be effective. Woo, we need to start cutting that down, because our army ain't getting big fast enough. Look, I work with universities all the time. We're not graduating people fast enough, right? So we have to do something different. This idea that we can continue to make linear progress and get 0.1% better on efficacy or detection is just not the world we can live in. Most of the people in this room are quite aware of what's happening across the world, geopolitically, cyber war-wise, all of those things. We now have nation-state tools baked into common ransomware. That's the world we live in, and we got to change it. If we continue to do this thing where we make linear progress, it is not going to get better. And ultimately, we're going to be the ones stuck with it. We're going to be the ones at 3 a.m. triaging it and trying to figure out for our company whether or not we just lost millions out the front door. So I'm going to call this normal intelligence for now. You can pick on me all you want. We can come up with a different name. I really don't care as long as the effort gets done. What I want to challenge everyone with in this room, vendors, competitors, defenders, let's go fix this as a community. We have seen the power of community at Carmen Black. We want that for all of us, not just our customers. So let's stop competing on this stuff. It's intelligence. We have spent so much time on threat intelligence and looking at adversary behaviors that we have ignored our home field advantage for too long. For far too long, we've given up. I've sat in the room with major CISOs who said, asset management is never going to happen. Not if you give up. Look, I'm a cynic too. I don't think you can work in security and not be a cynic. But if you give up from the start and say something can never happen, it will never happen. We in this room are this community. Like, I spent time talking to Phil this morning, and I asked him about the growth of this particular event. Like, have we seen as threat hunters and incident responders more people wanting to get in this game? The answer is yes. It's one of the most rapidly growing summits that SANS has. That's awesome. So guess what? We are the leaders. Like, we are the community. We need to remember that, especially when it comes to vendors out there. We can drive change. So imagine the world without the noise. How much easier would it be if you could rule out a false positive faster? How much easier would it be to say, oh, this is normal behavior for WMI and SCCM. And oh, by the way, I'm going to go share that out in the community. So Carmen Black is committed to setting up a Slack channel around this so that you can ask questions for normal. Now, I couldn't commit every resource in the company to manning that, but Mike Viscuso, the CTO of the company, has guaranteed that we will man that for an hour, 1 day a week. What we're asking is for anybody else who wants to participate, man another hour during the week. It's just an hour. Put a couple of your experts in there so we can exchange normal, start talking about it. Rule this stuff out faster as a community. Because the conversations are happening in our UEX, and it's awesome. But that's only going to impact Carmen Black customers. We want to impact the entire industry. Look, I didn't come into this industry to make incremental change. And I certainly didn't come to a vendor like Carmen Black, who has the ability to lead and the willingness to actually step up and lead. We could hoard this information. We certainly could, and keep our false positive rates low. We know that some of this information is probably going to help our competitors. Like, we're fully aware of that. We don't care. Why? Because it makes your life better. And we have to have that commitment. The leaders in this industry have got to have that commitment. And as a community, we've got to stand up and demand that from our vendors. So again, imagine your world without this noise. How much faster can we find evil? Oh, this all sounds great, Rick. Sounds awesome. But, we've heard things like this before. Yeah, you probably have. Hey, but wait, wouldn't this give adversaries a roadmap for how to evade technologies? Yeah, but guess what? They already know how. I mean, look, some of us in the room can't actually go review it, but if you go look at things like Marble and Grasshopper and some of these Vault 7 and Vault, they already know. They already know. I don't think we should be held up by buts. That's a terrible way to hold ourselves up. But. Arguing about edge cases. Can we do something about this problem? Can we, for once as a community, agree this is a problem and actually do something about it and get together? I sit on a whole lot of committees with other vendors and competitors in the space, and it gets weird. And let me tell you something. The adversary, they don't care about our politics. They don't care about who owns the market space or who's the best vendor. Like, they don't care about any of that. That is not a consideration for them. But here we sit as a community, arguing about edge cases, not getting together to actually drastically change this game, and we have got to. I just wrote a blog to kind of tee this up, and I said, we're hurtling towards something as a community. And I can't figure out if that thing is disaster or safety. Like, to be honest with you, some days I wake up and I go, oh, this is the day, like, we're doomed. I mostly try to stay optimistic about the problem because we are making a dent. There are good things that are happening, but our community has got to get together and demand that we're actually going to be a community around this stuff. I spent some time with Kroll yesterday. They said the same thing. Yeah, we waste a ton of time, and companies are paying for it. Like, cool, $300, $400 an hour, awesome. You just spent 6 hours finding SCCM. It's not good, right? So we all have these internal sources of intelligence. We have to treat it like external threat intel. You know, I'm a poker player. And I worked a long time to actually go play in the World Series of Poker. What I can tell you about this is poker is very interestingly a whole lot like incident response and threat hunting. You have a constant changing set of statistics. While you have a baseline of statistics, it changes per hand. As an example, is that player aggressive? You know, have you seen hands from them before? Context in poker becomes everything as well, because per hand statistics change. Aces aren't always the best hand to play. Trust me. Normal and abnormal gets really weird. Is it normal for someone to just go all in when they paid $10,000 on the first hand of the World Series of Poker? Yeah, I can tell you that happens on a regular basis, so it's not abnormal. But I have to factor that into how I play to actually have a chance of playing the hand and winning. I think for us, we have to do the same. Look, we can't choose when the gaze of Sauron comes upon our systems. We can't choose when evil's going to hit us. But we can choose what to do once they're inside our environments. We can choose what to do to set ourselves up to be successful when that does happen and get through those cycles faster. That's what we can control. I can't control an adversary when they're doing their thing. Once they get on my network, I can probably control them, but we have no control over that. What we can control is who we are as a community and how we interact, and it's got to change. Knowing normal is everything. We spend far too long focused on finding evil. We need to get through this cycle faster. We need to actually act like a community. We need massive leaps in progress, not linear changes. I wanted to say thank you to the entire Carbon Black team. This was a true team effort. I also wanted to thank SANS. It was a goal of mine to keynote a SANS event for probably the last 15 years. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank each and every one of you for being in the room and for doing what you do. It is extremely important what we do. We don't get told that enough, so as a defender, as someone who has wasted a lot of time alongside all the rest of us, I would just like to personally thank you. Keep up the good fight. Let's talk more. Let's get together as a community. We are Carbon Black, and I am proud to howl for that company. Thank you.